Hi Year 10, this is Mr. Tapley here for your first lesson of Year 10 History, Semester 2 at Glen Waverley. So this lesson I'll be going over the outline, the unit outline for history, just as a little introduction to what we're doing in Term 3 and Term 4. I'll be introducing our first topic, so we're aiming to develop our understanding of the interwar years. So those are the years between World War I, which is where you left off in Year 9, and World War II, the start of World War II in 1939, because those years are very, very important, because essentially what happened during those years caused World War II. So it's important we understand why World War II happened before we look at what was World War II. Our success criteria is to utilize our research skills, using some skills to pay the bills, and investigating one of these significant events between 1918 to 1939 that contributed to the outbreak of World War II. So, before I talk about history, I should probably talk about remote learning. We didn't think we'd be back here, but here we are. And some of you guys are probably happy to be back in remote learning. I spoke to a few students in this class, in my other Year 10 class, and they enjoyed remote learning. And that's fair. I think some students, if you give them a level of freedom, of independence, a bit of flexibility with how they can approach their learning, they enjoy it and they achieve high results because they are enjoying themselves, they're engaged, which means they're watching the video lectures, reading textbook, taking notes in class, using the digital notebook, etc. And they demonstrated a really strong work ethic throughout Term 2 remote learning that not only meant they achieved high results in remote learning, but when they came back to class, they achieved high results. I think a lot of students thought, oh, I'll just won't pay attention during remote learning, and then I'll come back in Term 2 and I'll just fix everything then. Not how it works. Everything we're doing is connected, and if you just decide to not pay attention for the first 8 weeks of the term, you're not going to just be able to flick a switch and then suddenly go to amazing student in week 9. So some of you guys did really, really well, and that probably segues into what I'm about to say, which is there are some students who will be looking to improve upon their results in geography. Those individuals will need to stay up to date with classwork, watch the video lectures, and then ask questions, of course. That's the number one advice I can give to you in school, in history, in any of your subjects, VCE, in work, in life, is to ask questions. I can't help you. I want to help you, but I can't help you if you don't tell me there is a problem. Like if there was a fire at your house, you wouldn't just sit there and wait for the firefighter to show up. You would say, oi, I have a problem, and they would be happy to help you, hopefully. I don't think a firefighter has ever hung up on me. Anyway, so if you have a problem, please let me know. And if it's, I don't understand this question, or I don't understand this entire topic, or I do understand, but I've had a lot of work in other subjects, I've had cats and sex and etceteras, can I have an extra lesson or an extra day? Happy to help, just need to let me know. So make sure you're asking lots of questions. Classroom setup will be similar to Term 2. I did get some feedback from you guys last term in terms of what worked, what didn't work, so I've made a few changes which will hopefully improve your life. But it's going to be similar to Term 2. I don't want to start something crazy complex and new and different, just as you got used to what we did in Term 2. So Compass lesson plans, video lectures instead of the live Zoom classes that other teachers do, and then Google Classroom resources and assessments, all the activities being recorded in your digital notebook, that Google Documents that you guys recorded, textbook questions, slide questions, etc. I've made a new one for history. Obviously, you're not just going to be adding to your geography book, and I'll show you where all that is located in a moment. And again, if you guys have more feedback to give me, more criticisms, more compliments, Lord knows I need them, then please let me know and I'll make some changes and adjustments on the fly in Term 3. So, enough about remote learning. What about history? Our new topic. No longer your geography teacher. I've transformed. I am your Year 10 history teacher. We've got 3 major topics that we'll be looking at in Year 10 history. So in geography we have the 2. History we look at World War II as our first topic. So we look at the causes, Australian involvement, so the fall of Singapore, Kokoda, which you might have heard of before, and then POW is prisoners of war. So we look at how not just Australian prisoners were treated during the war, but you can connect that to how Japanese prisoners were treated by the US and by Australia. You can connect it to the Holocaust, which we will also hopefully have time to look at in World War II. and then the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Second topic kind of flows on nicely from World War II. They're kind of arranged chronologically. They're in order of when they happened. So the second topic, we look at what happened after World War II. So we look at globalization and migration. So the impact of post-World War II migration. All those people lost their homes, their jobs, their families. Now they need new homes. Some of them came to Australia. So we look at immigration to Australia, multiculturalism. So what Australia looks like now compared to what it looked like before World War II, when we used to have what was called a white Australia policy. Our classroom would have looked very different if that was the case today. And then racism. So obviously not everyone is going to be happy with multiculturalism. And then the next topic we look at is, all right, we finished the war. How do we make sure war doesn't happen again? How do we make sure everyone has human rights, basically? We don't want the Holocaust to happen again. We don't want people to be dropping atomic bombs and the atrocities that occurred during the war. We want a universal declaration of human rights. And we look at civil rights movements in the US of A and AUS. That bloke in the middle there is Malcolm X. A lot of people know about Martin Luther King, who was in the US civil rights movement. Another similar but very different US civil rights movement leader was Malcolm X, which you may have also heard of, but we'll hopefully have time to hear about him later in the term. So, before I get into what we're doing this lesson, I should probably talk about what is history and why we study history, because I've gotten that from a lot of students in the past, from year 7 to year 10. Why do I need to learn this? This is stupid. It happened a while ago. Don't care about it. Which pisses me off. But I would say to them, and I'll probably say it to you with a very patronizing accent, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So historians attempt to understand and explain how people's lives were shaped by other people and events. So we look at cause and effect, which is something you use in science. I put this here, I put that there, it explodes. You'll use it in maths and engineering, in any aspect of your life. You use a lot of these historical skills elsewhere. If we study past mistakes, we can avoid them. So, okay, what happened 20 years ago, 100 years ago? That happened, I'm not going to do that again. Easy. If we study past successes, we can replicate them. I'm currently doing ancient Rome and ancient Greece with my year 7s at the moment, and we're learning about aqueducts, so how you transport water from point A to point B. And we wouldn't have cities, we wouldn't have schools, we wouldn't have running water if it weren't for them. So we study past successes, we replicate them. Studying history also helps us understand our heritage, so where our language, our culture, and our beliefs originated. Investigating the history of other civilizations will help us understand each other. So connecting to that multiculturalism, we'll see in Unit 3 when we look at immigration. I think most of the problems in the world today are because we don't understand something or we don't understand each other. And that leads to conflict. We are afraid of, we don't like, we get angry at things that we don't understand. It happens in the classroom. I've got people get angry at geography. And I think that studying each other's histories is a good way to understand each other and thus not piss each other off and not get into fights and violent conflicts with each other. So the skills we learn in history I touched on before, but they're valuable to all elements of your school and of life. Research, you do research throughout school, throughout history, throughout uni. Critical thinking, it's important to be critically thinking about things. You don't just look at something and say, sure. You look at it and you question, where is that from? Why is it here? What is it for? Communication, you need to be able to communicate with others throughout life. And then empathy, so being able to care for other people, being able to see what's happening to someone else and say, that sucks, I'm going to help them. I think we'd all be a bit more happy in the world if other people around us were more empathetic towards us. So I've got a quick 4-minute video there which you can have a look at, which is why is history important and what is history for? Next slide. So this is what we're doing today. Again, it's a little intro lesson. I'm not going to throw you in the deep end of the pool and just say go study all of World War II. All you're doing is selecting one of the topics on the next slide. I'll give you some spoilers as to what those are. So there are a lot of things that contributed to World War II occurring. These are some of the major causes that occurred during the interwar years. So we've got an image from the Great Depression, which I thought was pretty powerful. 4 children for sale. We've got fascism, which is a type of government that occurred in Italy. Mussolini there. Everyone knows Hitler. Not many people know Mussolini. Speaking of Hitler, there he is. Obviously, one of the causes of World War II was the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. Nazism, and Hitler was a big part of that. The Treaty of Versailles, which actually connects to what we did in Year 9 history. It's where we ended It was a big document that they signed at the end of the war, and it was so savage, so brutal to Germany that it actually pissed a lot of people off in Germany into starting another war. Japan. Imperialism in Japan. Some of you recognize that flag, some of you might not. That was the flag before World War II for Japan. That was the Imperial Japan flag. And then finally, another forgotten figure, Stalin, who was the leader of the USSR, which is now Russia, and the rise of communism in Russia also played a part of the start of World War II. So what I'd like you to do with all of these, pick one, and then answer those 3 questions there. So in Year 9, we finished at World War I. As an intro activity, we're going to look at these interwar years that ultimately caused World War II. So what you'll be doing is selecting one of the topics on the next slide, and then using your textbook. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 has information on all those topics. You just have to go find it. Answer the following questions in your digital notebook. You can also use the interwebs if you would like, but I encourage you to use your textbook, get familiar with it, because we'll be using it throughout the unit. So question number 1 is, what is your topic? So just a very brief description. I'm not expecting essay in the first lesson of history. Very brief description, couple of sentences telling me what was the Great Depression, or who was Mussolini, and what was fascism in Italy all about? When did it occur? Where did it occur? I shouldn't have written when there, because I actually attached the dates to the images. That's my bad. So I've given you part of the answer there. You're welcome. Question 2 is, how did this topic contribute to causing World War II? So how did the Treaty of Versailles lead to World War II happening 30 or 20 years later? Question 3, if your topic never occurred, would World War II have been prevented? Why do you think that? So there's no wrong answer here. It's really a yes or no question, or a maybe question. Again, I'm only expecting 1 or 2 sentences. In your personal opinion, that's what I'm after. There's no textbook answer for question 3. It's your personal opinion. After you study imperialism in Japan, or after you study Nazism in Germany, do you think that World War II would have been avoided if that didn't happen? So you got 3 questions there. Oh, I should also point out, I was trying to find good videos for the interwar years, just to add to the slides, and there was lots of good documentaries that were like an hour long. This was only 2 minutes long, not 112% historically accurate. I'm not going to quote it in a university essay, but it's the interwar years period portrayed by SpongeBob. So I thought that was interesting. It talks about communism, Hitler appointed chancellor in Nazi Germany. I just thought it was a bit funny. Anyway, so that's what you're doing, guys. And if you have any questions, please let me know. You should be able to find all these resources that we've been using in our class here. The code I've sent out to you guys. If you don't have the code, it's right there. I've put it in the Compass lesson plan as well, but you should have received an email inviting you to the class. We've got our class slides, link to these video lectures I'm making, student notebook for Year 10 history. Remember, that's your individual file. You don't need to create a new file every lesson. You don't need to submit it every lesson. You just need to open it up and then type away. And then textbook chapters, I've put them all in one place again. Chapter 1, Chapter 2 right there. And all those resources will be in Compass as well. And yeah, I think that's all I've got to say, guys. Best of luck. Sorry I can't see you face to face, but hopefully we see each other at some point during the term. Cheers.